Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us to Innovate BC's Road to Web Summit event today. We have such an incredible turnout in person and online. I think we have over 300 people registered today, so thank you for joining us for today's event. My name is Ginny Wu, Director of Marketing and Communications at Innovate BC. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And Innovate BC is very privileged to be working with innovators from across the unceded and traditional territories across all of BC. We have a lot of people joining us online, so feel free to say hello and share your location in the chat if you have a chance. Okay, now a little bit about Innovate BC in case you're not familiar with who we are. Innovate BC is a Crown agency for the province of British Columbia under the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation, or more fondly known as JEDI by many of us. I have to say that my daughter, who is a Star Wars fanatic, gets a kick out of me saying Jedi very often in my work and also is very confused on a regular basis. Innovate BC, our mandate really is to support tech ventures like yourself to grow in British Columbia, helping to drive economic prosperity for our businesses, for our industries, and for our communities. We have a very strong suite of programs that are available to you to help you grow your business, anything from commercialization to IP to capacity building. So feel free to check out our website or reach out to any member of our team to learn more about these programs. One of our newest programs is the Road to Web Summit Vancouver. Can I get a show of hands? Who is attending the inaugural Web Summit Vancouver in just 7 weeks? Okay, well, it's almost everyone in this room. If you haven't purchased your ticket or applied for the startup program, there is still time. Amanda Collette from Web Summit's team will be sharing more details later when she comes up to speak. But Web Summit is one of the most significant and largest tech and innovation conferences in the world. And it literally is bringing the global market to our doorstep. Over 15,000 delegates from around the world will be here in Vancouver, and it is an opportunity that all of you need to capitalize on. So Road to Web Summit Vancouver is really our initiative to prepare BC startups and companies so that you can capitalize on the opportunities that come. So investors, potential buyers, the global media, how can you leverage these relationships? So apart from today's event, we are also working with 15 incredible partners from across BC to offer tailored programming, events, and training to help you capitalize on this global opportunity. So if you want to learn more, there's still tons on this roadmap, as you can see, from now until the end of May. Scan the QR code. There are lots of opportunities for you to take advantage of. All right, we are going to move on to some housekeeping. For our in-person guests, could you kindly turn your phones on silent? That would be really helpful. And I'm sure you will all have tons of questions for our amazing panelists. If you can use slido.com and the hashtag R2, I always say R2D2, but it's R2WSV, to submit your questions for our panelists. Okay, now moving on to our agenda. So it's jam-packed. We have a lot in store for you. First, we are very privileged to be hearing from the Honorable Minister Gibson. Then we'll hear from the Web Summit's team, both from the media team as well as Amanda Collette, who's joining us today. Then we're going to dive into an amazing panel with seasoned PR and journalists, as well as moderated by our own Tamid Sadivic, for insights into what they are looking for in terms of a really good media pitch. Then we'll dive into a Q&A session, and for our in-person guests, we'll have a networking session until 6 p.m. today. And again, a reminder, if you have any questions, please use Slido. Okay, on to the next slide. Just want to say a huge thank you to the Microsoft team for providing this beautiful space for today's event. So a big thank you to Pamela, Hannah, Kia for accommodating us today. So a big thank you. Okay, we're going to dive into our first remarks. So before we hear from the panel, it is really my extreme pleasure to welcome the Honorable Diana Gibson, Minister of Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation, who has prepared some remarks for all of us today.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Gibson, the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation for the province of British Columbia. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the territories of the Lekwungen peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. Thank you to our Crown agency, Innovate BC, for hosting this virtual event. Innovate provides a lot of valuable education and networking opportunities, including this webinar, that is part of their Road to Web Summit Vancouver series. I've seen today's speaker lineup. You're going to hear from some remarkable professionals with an abundance of experience in public relations and communications, who can provide insight not only into refining your startup story, but how to share it effectively. As we face the threat of unjustified UF tariffs on the BC economy, there has perhaps never been a more critical time than now to take advantage of every chance you get to tell your story, to showcase your discoveries and creations, and how these innovations will make life better for people. Web Summit Vancouver is going to provide opportunities for you to expand your connections, meet global investors and industry, world-class management and talent, and other entrepreneurs and innovators just like you, who have great ideas that can make all the difference. And there will be opportunities to engage the media from BC, from across Canada, and from around the world. So get all that you can out of today's session to help you get ready for Web Summit Vancouver and beyond. Innovate BC has been doing an amazing job providing the Road to Web Summit Vancouver series to help you leverage all the potential the summit has to offer. Be sure to tune in to some of the other great upcoming events. Together, we can make Web Summit Vancouver a catalyst for growth in British Columbia's tech sector. Thank you for your time and enjoy the event.
Well, a big thank you to Minister Gibson and for championing our Road to Web Summit initiative. And again, just a little plug, there's tons of opportunity left, so be sure to sign up for the existing and upcoming events and opportunities. Next up, I want to introduce Mary Kavanagh from the Web Summit's media team. She's prepared a message for us because she's unable to join. I think she's from Dublin, but she will be here during Web Summit. She's going to dive in a little bit more about the vast media opportunities that will be available at Web Summit Vancouver.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary Kavanagh. I'm the media lead for Web Summit Vancouver. And yeah, today I'm going to be taking you through a presentation on crafting your startup's media story for Web Summit Vancouver. And thank you so much to Innovate BC for asking me to speak at the event. I hope it's going well. So just to give you an overview, we're going to have over 750 startups at the event and over 600 media will be attending. So with so many startups attending and so many journalists attending, your challenge as a startup is how to stand out. So that's something to start thinking about this evening, and to think of things that might set you apart from other startups and why a journalist might be interested in covering you. So I'm going to kick off the presentation. Here's some outlets who've attended in the past and who are attending Web Summit Vancouver. So you'll probably recognize a lot of these media outlets like Fortune, Wired, Forbes, Vancouver Tech Journal, Yahoo. And this is how our conferences have appeared in the media. So Forbes has said, considered the single most important tech and deal-making event in the world. The Globe and Mail have said, for those looking to pitch their businesses to the broader public and solicit venture funding, big reasons why people travel widely to Collision. Sifted has said, the world's biggest conference for tech startups. Business Cloud said, Web Summit now attracts an estimated 70,000 people, from policymakers and heads of states to key figures at tech giants and the founders of around 3,000 startups to ask a simple question, where to next? And then another comment on Web Summit Lisbon, which attracts 100,000 in a normal year. This is being credited to be doing more than any other event to shape the world's startup ecosystem. So that was from Politico. So some of the top media attending, and a lot of these media will be moderating on stage. So we have Jennifer Cunningham, she's editor-in-chief of Newsweek, Katie Drummond, the global editorial director at Wired, Nathan Lump, editor-in-chief of National Geographic. That's Swati Sharma, the editor-in-chief and publisher at Vox. We have Emilio Garcia Ruiz, editor-in-chief at the San Francisco Chronicle, Kate Marino, executive editor at Axios, Amy Nordrum, executive editor at MIT Technology Review, and Harry McCracken, the global technology editor at Fast Company. So that's just to give you an idea of who will be moderating on stage and some of our top media attendees. So how to reach out to media. So as I mentioned, we're going to have over 600 media who will attend Web Summit Vancouver. So you as a startup will be shared a list of media who are interested in connecting with startups. You can also reach out to the greater network of media attendees of interest through our mobile app. So this evening might be a good time to download that app. And then I'm going to move on to our media portal. So the first port of call for our Web Summit media attendees looking for news stories is our dedicated media portal. So that's a link to it underneath there. So we encourage startups announcing news at Web Summit to provide an accompanying press release that we can host on our media portal. So a select few newsworthy press releases are chosen to be featured on our website. So hosting a press release on our media portal also creates a unique URL that can be shared with your wider network and posted on your company's social news channels. So we've come up with some do's and don'ts here of writing a press release. So when to write a press release. So if the company is launching something, if they've secured funding, if there's a new product, service, or territory launch, winning or renewing a partnership, publishing research findings, new newsworthy hire, winning an award, customer or user acquisition milestone, or an industry first. So some do's when writing a press release. So what to do? Have a subject line that spells out what the news is and a pitch written in honest, plain English. Be lean and impactful. You don't need to provide all the details in the background. So answer the question, why does this matter today? Stick to the facts. Tell us what you have, what it does, and what it solves. And then include the classic who, what, when, where, and why in your story. Make sure to answer these 5 questions in the opening paragraph to give readers a clear picture. What not to do? Use buzzwords such as disruptive, game-changing, or revolutionary, first of its kind. Provide long-term content without enough context or information. Give information that will be outdated by the time it's published. And here's some past coverage that startups have received at our events. So we have our pitch winner there on the bottom left. That was our pitch winner, Voxel from Collision last year. And these are 4 Canadian tech startups that were mentioned in Bedikit. And then over here is Cohere. So that's one of the largest startups in Canada. So that was quoted in Bloomberg. And then, as I mentioned before, the best way to reach out to media is via the mobile app. You can search for and filter members of the media on the app, and you can send a connection request and message. And we recommend tailoring your message to each contact. And then for any further questions, you can contact your startup success team. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you all in May.
Thank you, Mary. Those are some really helpful tips. And just a reminder, we're looking at over 600 journalists. That is a really incredible opportunity. So I hope all of you can take advantage of that. And a big shout out to the BC organizations that were just named from Vancouver Tech Journal, as well as Voxel, who won the pitch competition at Collision last year. So big kudos. Up next, I would love to invite Amanda Collette. She's the Deputy Country Manager for Web Summit, and she's going to dive in a little bit further in terms of the opportunities available at this amazing conference.
Thanks, Jenny. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. First, I do want to say thank you to Innovate BC and as well as Microsoft for hosting today. My role is I am the local person as far as representation with Web Summit Vancouver. So I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit of what to expect on that front. All right. We're going to kick off with our video just on a little clip on what to expect. That's a little sneak peek on what to expect as far as happening in May. So we're really excited. Right. What to expect. So how many attendees are we going to be having? We're tracking for over 15,000, but our target goal is 15,000. As Ginny also mentioned, 750 startups. I will let you know there is a deadline cutoff to apply for April 20th. So if you haven't yet started, please do. We are still accepting applications, but I am very excited to announce we are over our 750 target, close to up over 900, and over 600 of those are Canadian. So a really good opportunity, something to celebrate. Web Summit coming to Vancouver, really wanting to take advantage and showcase the talent and the opportunity that our Canadian market has. So amazing work on our team on that end. How many speakers? Over 120 over 120 partners. I'm going to go like this, guys. So I'm definitely being a little impromptu here, so apologies. But we have over 120 partners across 130 countries, and we'll be having over 350 speakers. That's across all 3 days, as well as our master classes included. I'll have you go to my next slide. Thanks, guys. So what to expect? What does the week look like? So technically the conference is over 3 days, and then the Tuesday is our opening ceremonies, as well as our, which we call day 0, but our first night summit. Our night summit events are a great opportunity to connect and build those connections and meet with those of interest with your business, whether that's investors, whether that's potential prospects, and building and fostering relationships on an international level. Our stages. This is exactly what to expect on our track. We have over 10 stages that are going to be featured across the 3 days. And Innovate is also focusing on 3 sectors, which are also going to be featured on here as well, which fall within the life sciences, digital, as well, and the gaming sector. Attendee opportunities. So what are those? What does it look like? Lead generation, networking opportunities, how to create more brand awareness, the learning and development, and learning from different thought provokers across the globe. Something that, bringing that global presence to Vancouver all over the course of 1 week, which is amazing for our ecosystems to take advantage of. Awesome. And then here's some example of our top funds of what to expect as far as investors at Web Summit Vancouver. I really appreciate the tech team over there, by the way, so thank you. And then as far as Mary already covered and touched on, what to expect and who's going to be present as far as our media broadcast. Exhibition space. So one thing that I think is very unique and very cool about Web Summit Vancouver is it's not just your traditional pipe and drape or your standard booth. It's really showing the innovation and when you walk the floor. And so it makes it a very unique and fun experience of different organizations to be able to showcase. This is an example of some of our major sponsors and partners that you can expect to see at the show. And our startup initiative. So what does that look like? Why is that valuable to you? So we have different opportunities through our startup program that is directly through Web Summit Vancouver. So we have our pitch competition. We have different mentor hours that you can book with meetups that are pre-scheduled. So this is where the app, I'm going to request that if you haven't downloaded it yet, you can actually download the Web Summit Vancouver app today. It is constantly being updated. It's so valuable for you to learn and almost study that app because you can pre-schedule those investor meetings or any potential mentor meetings, or also just understand who on the media aspect, which our team is going to sort of cover off a little bit later. Some of our great stories. So Uber is sort of one of my favorite that I always like to talk to. We can't take all the credit because Uber is Uber at the end of the day, but when they were first funding and starting, they did actually come to a Web Summit event, and they met with investors actually at a Web Summit event, which obviously now everybody knows Uber. So it's a really great story to be able to showcase. Same with Airbnb, same with Stripe. So those are some of the success startups that have been featured, are now known on an international level. Our lounges. So there's 8 different lounges to expect on the floor. They're sort of sprinkled throughout. As far as the startups, we have different startup, whether it's alpha, whether it's growth, or beta, as well as we have our investor lounge as well. So one of the things, especially as a startup and wanting to foster and create and have meetings or build relationships with potential investors, is to use the app to request and sort of do a soft pitch that way, and they'll pre-schedule a meeting with you on the floor the days of the event. There you can see, we also have a snapshot of our app and what it actually looks like. So go ahead and download it. But one thing I also want to sort of elaborate is our night summits. So our night summit events are curated to ensure that you're meeting with the right people that align with your business goals. So previous events, even that we've hosted, for example, where there might be multiple activities or evening events happening, but say you get a little FOMO and there's maybe somebody's here and somebody's there, you're missing opportunity. So when you actually register as an attendee, you also will go through our app and you will flag what interests align with your business. So say I'm a woman in tech who's looking in manufacturing, a niche of a niche, you'll be matched with those individuals who will be at a particular meetup that have the same interests. So maybe there's only 40 people in the room, but it's the right 40 people to really maximize time, as well as it pushes through to WhatsApp. So after the event, you're connected to those individuals that you want to build that relationship with. And that is everything on my end. Thanks for being flexible with me on that. I was a little thrown off, so thank you very much.
Okay, a big thank you, Amanda. You covered a lot, and I think I saw a lot of people taking pictures of the slides, so don't worry. We will be sharing a full recording of today's event with everyone, so you can get all that information in your inbox. Okay, I think we're moving on to the panel now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Tumitsa Divik, our Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Ecosystem Development, to lead our panel discussion. And Tumitsa, I think we're having you sit right here. Okay, and maybe we'll invite all of the panel, and Tumitsa will introduce all of you.
Thank you so much, Ginny. And maybe while everyone's getting settled, I just wanted to again thank Microsoft for hosting us and Amanda for the great overview of Web Summit. Something that I've been telling everybody is like how excited we are to have the event here. We talk about BC's amazing tech ecosystem. We have amazing startups leading the way globally in like clean tech and life sciences. Multinationals call this place home. And then we also have the global market coming to our doorstep during the best time of the year, end of May. So how lucky are we to have literally all of these investors, customers, media coming to us instead of us having to go out and find them. So really want to make sure that everybody here is leveraging this opportunity. And I was very lucky to have had the chance to attend a couple of web summits, and it's literally like walking into the World Wide Web where there's so many companies and things happening. So what we really want to talk about today is how do you stand out? How do you leverage this opportunity of the world watching to stand out and have your story told? So I'm very lucky that today we have some amazing experts with us today. I'm going to ask them all to just introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into some practical tools and tips. But Nicole, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to see everybody here today and everybody online. I am Nicole Broussard. I'm the Vice President of Global Public Affairs. So we assist companies from kind of concept all the way up to like funding rounds and commercialization to help craft your narrative and truly who your audience is and who you should be talking to instead of just everybody, really focusing that. So excited to be with you today and looking to dive into this exciting topic and Road to Web Summit. Here we go.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name's Kate Wilson. I have had roles as the managing editor of the Vancouver Tech Journal, as well as technology editor at the Georgia Straits, and I've had staff media jobs on both sides of the pond in England and Canada, and I've worked at the local, national, and international level. So really excited to share a couple of tips about where you might be in your stage for how to pitch to media.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Krennick. I'm Chief of Staff and Senior Director of Communications at Aspect Biosystems. We're a local Vancouver-based biotech company of about 100 people. I joined when there were only about 5 of us, so I'm very familiar with startups pitching a media story, and kind of been with the company all the way through, and so really excited to kind of share some of the experiences we've had along the way.
Hi everyone, I'm Robin Gill. I was a journalist right across the country for 30 years, and then about 4 years ago I made this switch, and so the perspective I'm going to provide for you is I kind of straddle 2 worlds. I am a communications consultant, but I still do some freelance hosting for radio, so I have to pitch, and I'm pitched to, so to speak, so I hope that I provide some perspective on that.
Awesome, thank you all. So we get some very diverse perspectives on all sides of the coin for companies to hear from. My first question is going to be quite broad, and it's a free-for-all. And it's, why does media matter? So with 600 media coming to town, with Canada in the global news, which we aren't often, but we are right now, how do we actually pivot that and use it as an opportunity to have some amazing stories told about why this is a great place to invest, do business, and shine a spotlight on some amazing companies here? So just like, why does media matter? And free for all, whoever wants to take this one.
The biggest question to start off with. Yeah. Also, just a shout out that it's all women up on this panel today. That doesn't happen very often, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Why does media matter? It is so hard to break through. There's 600 media. That's incredible at Web Summit. I don't think I've ever seen that amount of media at a conference like this, and especially not in British Columbia. But I think if you can match what you are trying to get out into the world with an outlet that makes sense, they can really help you kind of break through, and that's kind of what we'll be talking about today too. But also just help you break out of your narrative. I think a lot of startups kind of get stuck being like head down in your technology and what you're trying to do, and it's hard to look at it from that 40,000 foot view about why it matters to everybody else and why it will matter to the world when you're coming with an innovative technology or a platform. And so I think it'll not only help you get your message out, but also help you think about your organization and your company as well, and how you can kind of like just back out of being a founder or a CEO and craft that pitch.
I would say that media matters, obviously, because you want to amplify your stories and you want to amplify your voices. And honestly, everybody does have a story to tell. And the other thing is you want to solve something. I think that every time I get a pitch, tell me what you're doing to help the general public. What is it about you that is going to help me with my health? It's going to help me with my everyday living. And on the other end, there's a need for content. So if you can provide that story, the media needs it. Honestly, with the dwindling numbers of staff, there are layoffs every single week. So there is a need to fill. We got to fill pages, we got to fill radio, we got to fill television, we got to fill all these things. So there is a huge demand for content, and that's where you come in.
And I would say as well, I think media really matters for your startup because it's going to give you credibility, and that credibility is going to afford you potentially more intros for funding. It's going to help you to build on credibility at first level to then go to bigger publications and help to build your company brand. So definitely take the leverage while you can to be in touch with a lot of the media at Web Summit, because it's really going to act as a stepping stone for you to keep advancing.
I would echo what Kate said. It's definitely like a cumulative effect of media coverage, but I think it's also a great opportunity to tell kind of the human side of your story. Like, we can put out a press release, we can tell people the facts, but it's often not until kind of stories get out there from journalists or online that you're actually able to kind of see the human side, and kind of what you were saying about how you're kind of able to say how this matters for people.
It's such a good point too, and just like the legitimizing your business too. What is the first thing everybody does when they meet you or they get your business card? They're going to go away and Google you. And if you're not backed up by a bunch of articles and validators talking about how great your company is, and they're just going to find your About Me on the website, it's a bit of a different takeaway. So I definitely echo that point as well.
Awesome, thank you all. So like 2 takeaways: validation and visibility, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. So if you're wanting to be visible to investors, and then that's also backed up by a credible news source writing about your business, it can really help propel that success. So yeah, really, really great points. Robin, you talked a little bit about your background as a journalist covering all kinds of like global events, elections, pandemics, visits with really high profile people. But the media landscape has definitely changed a lot. I did a brief stint in PR for 3 years, like 15 years ago, and we used to call reporters on the phone and send them gifts so that things would stand out. It's changed so much. Social media was new. How has the media landscape changed from, I'd love to hear a couple of perspectives on this, both on the journalist side and then as well as somebody who does like PR and is trying to pitch media. How has it changed, and how has that impacted, I guess, a journalist perspective?
As I alluded to earlier, there are layoffs constantly with every single outlet. Reporters are required to do more with less all the time. It's very frustrating. And the one thing I notice is that, when we pitch, news releases, it's now cut and paste. And when I was a journalist, I was never allowed to do that. I had to ask a million questions. I had to question if it was a Canadian first or a world first. And people throw those things all the time into news releases, and I see them being cut and pasted into publications. And so I'm worried about that personally. So reporters aren't digging as much anymore either. And so that's what we're facing right now with this landscape. And it's really worrisome.
From my perspective, when we're pitching, we try to make it as easy, to Robin's point, to write the story. So include graphics. If you've got a video, include that too. Include a couple different quotes. Offer them a time if they want to meet with you. Here's your availability for the week. Let's get together. Really make it easy so you're getting more than just the copy and paste of the media release. You're getting a little bit more out of that media story. You're making it really easy for them. You're including some collateral. That'll go a long way and makes for a more dynamic story, I think.
Yeah. That's right. So it's like make their job easier by having your stuff prepared and ready.
I think the pandemic actually set a lot of that in motion as well, because at the time you couldn't go get video. You couldn't go get, a photo of a CEO or the person you were interviewing. So now that sort of set the stage for people handing out video, handing out stills, giving a picture of the CEO in front of, his, whatever technological advancement he's responsible for. So it really does actually help the reporter do their job better. Or I shouldn't say better, more efficiently.
Awesome, thanks. And then Kate and Natalie, for tech companies, how have you seen the media landscape change? What's kind of top of mind right now? What can companies be thinking about as they're preparing to pitch or get media stories out?
I think to tie those two things together, the place where the layoffs have been most significant is on the local level. Local news has just been gutted. I think Glacier Media last month, they shut 3 papers in BC, for example, and it's just kind of a snowball that keeps rolling. So I think that's significant when you're thinking about pitching, because a lot of people here, I think, will be early stage startups, so seed or pre-seed stage. So the media that you're likely looking for in that sense is going to be local media. So as we've mentioned before, it's really important to serve up exactly what a journalist wants. I think that pitching is kind of an exercise in empathy, where you have to put yourselves in the journalist's shoes and think, what would they want that's going to make this a story, rather than what do I want to give them that I think is the story. So it's kind of a switch there, and it's important to think about what the landscape is looking like at the moment.
The other thing about what you just talked about with, 3 local media outlets are closing in May, I believe, right? It's Glacier Media. And we used to get our ideas from those local papers when I was a local reporter. So you would get organic coverage because we would be chasing the other media. We'd try to find another angle, get another interview, but your story would be told in another way without you having to pitch it. So that's another loss to you.
Yeah, those are the days. I remember when I worked 10 years ago, I had an editor that said, if you're in the office, you were doing it wrong, because he doesn't want to see anyone in the office. He wants to see people out and about, because that's where the news is. And if you're not out, you're not getting the news. And now it's kind of all reversed, like it's a lot easier to do things over Zoom than it is to go and meet people in person. And I think that's really a big loss to the pitching and journalistic ecosystem, because that's where a lot of connections are made. And it's a lot easier to kind of like leapfrog that and shortcut by doing it on the internet.
Kate, you kind of mentioned something about making the journalist's job easier, and I know something that companies can maybe think about too is like, how do you make their job easier? How can you be of help to them? Something that I've seen be quite successful sometimes is if you're an expert in a certain field and you can help them and say, hey, when you're writing about X, you don't even need to write about me. Like maybe don't have anything in the news, but I can help vet some information for you. You'll likely be quoted in that story, or you'll get other exposure. So maybe Natalie, question for you, just looking at your work with like Aspect Biosystems and the field of work that you're in. How do you approach kind of that relationship with reporters and trying to leverage making the journalist job easier to get more coverage and visibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think you alluded to it already. It's a really good point. I think one thing that's important for us all as startups to take upon ourselves and companies is to really do your homework going into it. As all of them have alluded to, there's fewer people covering more and more and more. And sometimes they're not going to be an expert. Often they're not going to be an expert on what you do. Whereas before, maybe we were pitching to a specific biotech writer or a specific tech writer. That might not be the case anymore. And it's really important to know that going into an interview. Who are you talking to? What do they know? What will they not know? And that helps you to know at what level of detail you should be speaking to them. So similar to making their job easier, I think it's kind of upon us to really do our homework and know who it is that we're speaking with.
And everybody's a generalist now. You don't really have a beat anymore. For example, I was never a tech reporter, but one year, because everybody was talking about technology, I produced a whole segment on innovators in Canada. And they were news releases that had landed in my inbox months earlier, and I hung on to them thinking, I'm gonna need them down the road. So remember that, even if it doesn't land right away, they might need to later, when the topic that is relevant that comes up.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a really good example about how to kind of break through and how to pitch. It's also just being available too. Like Tamitza talked about, like be the expert, just be the person, and always be available. We referenced Uber earlier, but when they were trying to break into Vancouver, we stood up this little coalition, and Ian Tossinson was kind of our spokesperson. And that man took every single phone call. He did every single interview, and there was no space in the media cycle for anything else. It was just Ian Tossinson all the time talking about Uber and Lyft, and eventually it broke through, and it created enough pressure that they got their license, and now we can all take Uber, and it was great. But
I can tell you that I talk to Ian Tossinson on a regular basis
so sorry, Robin.
about everything.
Do gimmicks work? I remember like the black umbrellas and stuff throughout town when Uber was trying to make its way in. So do you have any practical tips for how to stand out?
I think those things like umbrellas don't help. You don't need to send them to the reporter anymore. But if you have an event and you give it out, I'm going to tell you, it gets around town and people are like, I want that umbrella. That's a great umbrella. And I was actually at an event in the summer. It was a long table dinner thing. And they asked me for my advice afterwards. I'm like, you needed to give out umbrellas. Whether it was raining or whether it was sunny, you needed it for coverage. And you put the restaurant's name on it. It's instant branding. And those umbrellas are $5. It's not going to cost you very much to produce.
From coverage, from the rain to media coverage, just right in there. Yeah.
I'd also say there's other things you can do that aren't necessarily gimmicky, that are kind of in a similar vein that keeps you top of mind. There are some companies, for example, that always send me a Christmas card, which is a small thing, and a lot of media companies can't receive gifts. It's not in their policy. So something like a Christmas card does count, and it makes sure that you're still up there. So it's something easy and simple and very available to everyone.
So those relationships are still really key in getting media coverage with the, I want to say like credible, like the traditional media sources. Do you have any, I guess, tips or tricks when it comes to pitching? I know, Robin, when we chatted earlier, like don't pitch me on it. Was it Monday, Friday? There was like a day?
Monday.
Don't pitch on a Monday. And I'll tell you why. Something always breaks on the weekend, or they have juniors and rookies on the weekend and they feel they need to fix it on Monday. So whatever was covered by, say an online reporter who may not have much experience, the senior person on Monday has to take over and redo it. It's also because the assignment desk is, they're still groggy. Reporters are like, they're rolling in, they're kind of tired. They're still, they still think it's Friday. So I always pitch on a Tuesday, and sure enough, Tuesday is a slow news day. Also, with this election, it's very topsy-turvy as well. Depending on what happens on the campaign trail, that could also dominate things.
I'd also always pitch in the morning. Always in the morning, because as we mentioned before, we have to produce something that day. You're only as good as your last article. You have to write that day. And some days you wake up and you got your coffee and you're like, I have no idea what I'm writing today. If there's something that's well pitched and it's relevant to your organization comes into your inbox right when you're having your coffee, I guarantee that's going to be the thing that they work on first.
Thank you.
I would also, building on what Kate said, be mindful of time zones. So I know when we've been pitching, I've been up very, very early in the morning if we are trying to reach an outlet that's on the East Coast, or conversely, I've been in Europe when we're trying to pitch to North America. So it's worth getting up very, very early to do that, by the sounds of it from Kate.
Also be timely and on topic. If there's something happening in the world, please tie it to that. You're more likely to get your story picked up because it'll like grow into this larger thing. You go into like CBC and like all the articles from the day, well, they're all Trump these days, but they're all, but there's usually like a theme around them. And so if you can identify that theme and where the puck is headed, to use a Canadian reference, you can probably get your story picked up quicker.
And keep track of your competitors' coverage too, because whoever's writing about them could be writing about you next time. So that's another thing to definitely keep in mind. I'd love to dive in just a little bit deeper. You talked about, pitch me in the morning and if I see a good pitch. Could you give some examples of like what was a pitch that caught your eye? Why did it work? Like something that worked, and then also on the flip side, what do you completely ignore? What's a hard no for you? So again, happy to go down the line.
I have a lot of hard no's. I'll come to them afterwards, I guess. But a good pitch. A company called Styx did a fantastic pitch a couple of weeks ago. So they did the basics. They told me who, what, when, where, why, which is, as the presentation mentioned, really, really important. They did it in advance. So you can send the news in advance of when you want to release it to a journalist, and it's called being under embargo. So you give them a date and time that you want that news to be published, and the journalist, if they agree to the embargo, cannot say anything about that news in advance until the date hits. But doing that does give the journalist the opportunity to ask some more questions and dig a bit more into it, and you'll end up with a much better story than kind of flying by the seat of your pants at the deadline of it being published. So they sent it under embargo, so I had lots of time to look at it. Thank you so much. And in the why, they did a fantastic job of making it sexy. Essentially what they do is cybersecurity, but the way that they pitched it is, hey, Gen AI is taking over and we can stop deepfakes. And that's so much more attractive to me as a journalist. I'm like, oh, hey, that's going to get eyeballs, rather than we're a cybersecurity company, we just raised a seed round. So that was a really big one. Oh, and they attached a press release, also important. Maybe we have time to talk about what goes into a good press release too. And they gave me images, and those images I had rights to, which is also important because when you publish something and it's not your image, you can have the photographer come back and try and get money for that. So rights-free images that you also attach, super important. They killed it. They killed it really good.
Awesome. Robin, anything coming to mind?
I will say, again, it was under embargo as well for me. This was a few years ago, and it was Chip Wilson making one of the largest donations in this country, let alone the province. And I knew the woman who was doing the PR for it, and so she called me and she gave me all the details. And it wasn't a news release, because I'll be super honest, when I was a reporter, I barely read the news release. I'm like, I need to talk to you, and you tell me what the real story is, and give it to me in 10 seconds. Cut to the chase. And it was a national story, and at first I was like, it's another Chip Wilson story, but it was really relevant, and it was protecting a huge chunk of land. It was awesome.
Awesome. And Natalie, how about from your perspective, it's anything that you've seen work really well for you working through Aspect?
Yeah, I guess for me it's on the flip side. I'm always the one sending it, so it's really great to hear from these two of what's useful, and good to hear that I think I do most of those things. But I think one thing we definitely try to do is to make sure that we have something in the email that's not the same as what's in the press release, not just copying and pasting what's in the press release straight into the email, because as you said, they're probably not going to look at it, or if they do, they're already seeing the same information. So trying to have something that's also a little bit more personalized to who you're sending it to, kind of going back to the saying, doing your homework, doing something that's going to be relevant to that outlet and make it specific of why not just anyone should care, why should that outlet, that journalist, and that journalist audience, why should they care?
A question for Robin and Kate. How many embargoes can you do with different organizations until you guys get mad about it?
Oh, I don't think there's an issue with that because you're not targeting the same reporter either. Remember that you're targeting different reporters depending on the topics that they like to cover as well. So I mean, for example, I'm now doing the pitching, and the way I write the news release in some situations is I write the story. I put the quotes in and I write it and weave it all together so that it comes across as a story and easy to read. And then there are other clients that I have where they don't want that. They want to have 7 quotes at the end, and I'm like, no one's going to pick 7 quotes. They're going to pick the first 2, and they have like 8,000 paragraphs. And I'm like, they insist upon it, and you have to do it because that's what they want, even if you try to tell them otherwise.
Yeah, it's always a political thing when you get 7 quotes at the end, and you know that you have to just tick all the boxes. Like this minister wants a quote, and this minister wants a quote, but you're not including all of those quotes.
Government does love to do that, just saying. So yeah, I heard, be prepared, have everything ready, make the journalist's job easy, and then also give them something special every now and then that others don't have access to, and that'll help build the relationship and also get you the right coverage. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience. We've got one around ChatGPT. Okay, using ChatGPT to craft your pitch, yay or nay?
Maybe if you want to start, like if you're starting from a blank page, maybe that's usually good to help with, but no.
If you're not a writer and you can't write, then run it through ChatGPT to put full stops in the right place and put commas in. But you need to be doing the work. You need to know what the outlet writes about. You need to know what it's written about previously. You need to send a tailored pitch to that outlet, and I guarantee you ChatGPT will be wrong, and very confidently wrong.
I have to tell you that I had to give a keynote speech to a youth group in the fall, and then I had to give another speech to another group, and I put my speech through ChatGPT. It was awful. Because it went passive. It wrote passively, and I write actively for one, and I write short and quippy, and they've created these long paragraphs out of nowhere, and I'm like, I'm never going to talk like this. So I'm not a big fan of ChatGPT for that reason.
ChatGPT likes its adjectives, and so.
Oh, totally.
And like nevermore, furthermore, moreover.
Act as a journalist and fix my press release. Okay, I'm going to take another question from the audience here is, how do we find the person to send our pitch? Super relevant question. You can have all the stuff ready, but if you don't know who to send it to, any tips on how to navigate? How do you get your information into the right hands?
I mean, I do a lot of Googling, for one thing. I Google reporters. I mean, I know a lot of the reporters, too, so I see what they're interested in, because often it's what they're interested in. I mean, their assignment desk will tell them to do something, but there's always something that they're specifically interested in. So find those reporters and see the topics that they like. That's how I work it.
That's such a good point. If you're going to be writing about transportation policy, do a bit of Googling, see who reports on that consistently. You can usually find their emails on the website, and then you can just stalk them. Usually include like the editor if you can find that too. It's usually a very generic email, but that's the best way to do it. Or hire me and Robin, and we'll do it for you.
I think it's also helpful to kind of stay on top of the news yourself and kind of stay on top of a lot of different newsletters. I get newsletters from so many different. Vancouver Tech Journal is one lovely one that I get. It is a great one. But it's really helpful just to be aware of what's being written, how it's being written, and you kind of just start to absorb a lot of it, and you start to notice the same names over and over again. And so it's helpful to kind of just stay on top of it organically as well.
Awesome, thank you. I've got another question here around pay to play. Should we avoid it or not? So that's paying for some type of media coverage opportunities. Do you guys have any opinions about it? Does it legitimize or do the opposite of that is it obvious to people?
Well, I'm kind of, it's a controversial topic. I can see both sides of it. So on the one hand, it's hard to get media. It's hard to get into a publication. So paying to play is going to guarantee that what you've produced is going to be on their webpage and seen. On the other hand, a news publication needs to make it very obvious that it's pay to play because you can't fall foul of advertising standards. You want to maintain your editorial independence and your credibility. So it's normally pretty apparent that you've paid for it when it arrives, and paid media always has less cultural cachet than an organic media story. So there's pros and cons. news outlets need it for their business model. A lot of money coming to media organizations at the moment is coming from sponsored content, the pay-to-play stuff. So you'll see it a lot. And I think journalists, it's kind of the devil you know, and they accept that that has to exist in their realm. But we don't love it. We don't love it.
I'm very torn about it as well because I want all these outlets to survive and I want them to do well. So yeah, they need the money. And it is very clear that it's sponsored, by the way. It's very obvious. But on the other hand, I had a client who really wanted to do pay to play, and I actually wanted to dissuade him from it. And I said, I think if we just wait a little while and we really work this outlet, we can actually get an organic earned media. And he's like, nope, let's do it. And when I followed up to try to get more coverage afterwards, it didn't work. And the other thing is that I asked for the KPIs on it. It wasn't very much. They didn't have that many hits.
That's really good insights.
Yeah. Sorry, just to jump in on the business side of it, if you are going to do paid media, ask to see the metrics for what equivalent sponsor content has done in the past. I think some outlets, I think Daily Hive, they probably don't do it anymore, but they used to guarantee a certain amount of views, and then they would basically put their own money behind it to make sure it got that number of impressions. So some people have that model. Other organizations will just kind of put it up and be like, it gets what it gets. So there's different ways that publications approach it, and you need to figure out whether that's going to fit in your marketing budget and strategy.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Ginny, how many more questions do you think we have? Because we've got some more coming in, so I just want to know how many. Yeah? Okay, awesome. One of the questions, somebody wanted to go back to the hard nose. So, Kate, you brought it up. We said we'd come back to you. Let's kick it off with you.
Okay. Don't spell my name wrong, number one. Simple, but you would be very surprised. Yeah. Number two, make sure you actually write the correct media outlet when you're pitching them, because lots of people do a mass pitch and they forget to change that, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. Make sure you're hitting all of the points, the who, what, when, why, how, etc., because otherwise it's kind of irrelevant. Hard no, I would say. When you're following up, don't, unless it's timely, in which case do follow up. You can follow up that day. Otherwise, leave it for a little bit. 3 days is a reasonable amount of time, or else you just piss off the journalists. Like, we get so many emails. I get 50 to 100 emails, and if I have read your pitch, and I've decided that that is not the pitch that is the best pitch at this time, but that doesn't mean that, tomorrow I'm not going to have something to write about. So, similar to what Robin was saying, sometimes you can kind of let them breathe and they come back around.
And keep it short, too. Don't write a 7-page press release and send it in and expect somebody to read 7 pages.
Oh my God, yeah, under 300 words, please.
I don't like the switch and bait. So I had somebody pitch me a few weeks ago when I was filling in at CKNW Radio, and they said, oh, we have all this data, we have this great survey, we have this great study. And I'm like, great. And so I brought them on, and within 2 minutes, they were basically selling their business. And that's awkward for me because I trusted the data and I trusted the person who pitched it as well. And I just thought, I can't keep talking. This is a sale. This is a commercial. This is not a relevant news story or something that's relevant to our world. I was like, oh boy, I had to cut the person off afterwards. I'm like, 5 minutes. And normally these interviews are 10 minutes. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how am I going to fill the next 5 minutes?
So don't burn bridges by doing things like that. But I have seen things like reports and polls be useful because people love to write about.
Love data. I love data personally.
Data. Yeah. So finding ways to embed that into your strategies and your thinking and something your business can be a part of as like a broader industry trends, I do feel are opportunities to.
And don't use a ton of jargon too. Like a lot of your companies are like very highly technical. You're in the weeds on all this stuff. To all of you, it makes sense. But to the general public, we have no idea what you're talking about. A good example is like General Fusion. They're a fusion company. Does anybody know what that means? Probably not. Does anybody know what compressing plasma does? No. But so we write their press releases for the general public so it makes sense about like the environment and zero carbon, things like that.
I also do some media training, so I prep, CEOs or whoever needs prepping for an interview. And I did some media training at UBC a few weeks ago, and I always say to them, give me a metaphor. And I had to interview this scientist, and I ran her through a course. And she was so awesome. She really simplified it, and I was like, I totally understand what you're doing. When I went onto the website, I had no idea what she did. And then when she actually did the interview, she was amazing. But she really simplified it with words that I would understand, the world would understand.
That's a super great point. I know there's a lot of tech founders in the room, so we do tend to hear some of that jargon and people going very, very technical, and most reporters do not have that background. So good thing to keep top of mind. Awesome. Yeah, sure.
There was a mention of about 600 journalists or 600 media coming to Web Summit. So from your experience point of view, how do you filter? Because we get a lot of inbound for pay to play kind of requests. Like you pay this and you pay that and you will get this certificate, you will get this trophy, you will get this mention, yada yada. So from the Web Summit perspective, with 600 media people coming in, there is no way I'm going to be able to know who's genuine.
Awesome.
What I do know is that Vancouver and Canada does not have 600 media outlets.
So I'll say.
Oh, I can reassure
listening,
you, there are not 600 media outlets in Canada right now.
For people
there are
listening
barely
online,
600
I'll just
reporters.
repeat the question so that everybody who's listening online can hear. So the question was 600 media coming in from around the world. As a company, often we've been talking about companies pitching media, but as a company that might be getting hit up by these reporters and journalists, and some of them might be looking for pay-to-play kind of opportunities, you haven't validated them. How do you as a company vet those opportunities? Did I get that?
That's part of it.
Okay.
The second part is that how do we filter whom to speak with and whom to say
How to filter? Yes, and I saw that come up. Yeah, is all press good press, and should we be? I guess how do you filter through those opportunities?
We are using the app. I'm trying to reach out to people to connect and say, can we connect or whatever. I don't know who's genuine, who's right, who's good, who's not. How is there a science to it? Is there a trick to it?
It's literally Googling them and seeing if they're relevant to your business.
It takes a little bit of legwork, but it is, probably not going through all 600. You don't have time for that. But yeah, hopefully we can sort them by sector. You can kind of get a sense of what they're interested in, and that'll reduce that list for you. But yeah, as Robin said, just do a little research on your own.
Also, if I understand the question as it is, and it's news organizations hitting you up, right? The people that are hitting you up are probably not the reporters. They're almost certainly the sales department at that organization. So also when you're having that interaction and thinking about that relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to organic coverage later. That's a relationship you have with the salesperson, not with a reporter.
And maybe to that end too a little bit, when we talk about connecting with these reporters. So Amanda mentioned the app. You will be able to reach out and connect directly to some of the media attending. There were some other questions though about how else to connect and build those relationships. Is cold outreach okay? Are cold calls okay? Is connecting with somebody on LinkedIn okay? Is sliding into their DMs okay? What's not okay when trying to establish some relationships with the new media that's coming to town?
I don't mind LinkedIn. I mean, my website's public, so you can email me directly too. I don't like even my Instagram. That's private. That's just for me and my friends. But LinkedIn is the Rolodex as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's kind of personal. I hate when people phone me. Sorry if you phone me. I'm probably not going to pick up because I'm going to think it's a CRA or someone trying to get my social insurance number. So please don't phone. But everything else is fine. Cold emails are great. They do work. The best way to ensure that you do get media coverage is having a face-to-face relationship. So if you're able to get coffee with someone, you're able to set that up, that's the best way. I'd say the second best way is finding out what events they're going to be at and then making an introduction there. Add them on LinkedIn, get their email, follow up afterwards. Because journalists are really good at making sure that they're evaluating the pitches that they get in a balanced and fair way. But I guarantee you if they're trying to decide between two pitches, they're only human. And if they know you and you built that relationship and you have some credibility, they're going to read your pitch and they're going to cover your pitch all day.
And get their cell phone numbers too. If you bump into people at Web Summit, grab their cell phone numbers, text them something interesting about what you're doing, kind of build that relationship. And then when you do have something to pitch them on, it'll ping for them like, hey, you're a normal person with a normal company. Okay, we can actually write a story about you.
So true, and you'll get a quicker response that way too. Yeah.
I think one thing I'll add as well, which is kind of further to what Robin was saying about using LinkedIn and what you were mentioning earlier as well about needing content. One thing I'm noticing more and more is journalists on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm writing a story about this. I need an expert on this. Please email me at this. Like, that is the easiest way to reach out to a journalist, is if they're actually asking you for this information. And I'm finding I'm seeing that a lot more than I used to, which is interesting.
That's a big shift because that information was never publicly available, right? So that is actually democratizing access to reporters and media and opportunities for people to get their stories told.
It is, and on the backside of that, from the media point of view, that's increasing its profile on LinkedIn. That's going to get liked and shared. That's amplifying that outlet too. So it's kind of a win-win. Like you'll get to be on their radar when you wouldn't necessarily have been before. And journalists, the jobs are precarious. So anything we can do to increase our metrics, we're going to do. So there's lots of win-win scenarios out there.
Awesome. I'm going to close off with one really interesting and relevant question. We heard in the presentation from Web Summit when to do a press release, like if you have an announcement, if you're the first, do something world first. These are the kind of things that the media will pay attention to. There's a question here though, what if you're a founder? What if you're like a new startup? What if you don't have something that's like a traditional announceable? How would companies like that take advantage of the media that is coming to town? Is there still an opportunity to build a relationship or get some type of mention or coverage?
I think it kind of goes back to what we started off at the top of this conversation, how to make yourself different, how to make yourself interesting, how to stand out from the crowd. It doesn't have to be a gigantic announceable that'll get you the media story. What problem are you solving for Canadians or for the global market that is new and different and exciting? And that's your angle in. And so it doesn't have to be a gigantic press release and talking about how much money you've raised. It can just be like, we've identified problem X, we're solving it with Y, here's why we're cool, we are Canadian, or because that's big right now, or we are, here's like kind of the CVs of everybody that works here. Aren't we exciting, and shouldn't you be more interested in us?
The other thing is, if you're affected by the tariffs, everyone wants to talk to you right now. Everyone.
So I'll maybe wrap up with that very relevant question is, hey, you've got media talking to you, congratulations. What do you do and what do you say? So you talked a little bit, Robin, about media training. How does a company, how do we prepare to answer those questions? They might be questions that we want to be asked, they might be questions we don't want to be asked. Any just like super high level tips for how to actually be media ready when you have that opportunity?
3 key messages. That's all you really need. Tell us what you do, what you're solving, and really use simple language. The other thing I really liked when I was a reporter, I liked metaphors and comparisons. Like Doug Ford, however you feel about him, when he was talking about the tariffs at the beginning, he's like, the stock markets are going to go down like the American bobsled team. I'm like, it was the bite that resonated across the country because it was funny, it was witty, it was quippy, and it cut to the chase.
Awesome. Same question. Yeah.
I think journalism has a weird kind of archaic language around it, and not many people are necessarily literate in that. So be aware that when you're talking to a journalist, everything is on the record. And on the record basically means that anything you say can be used and quoted in an article. So be careful about what you're saying. Obviously you can have a discussion, but be careful that you don't say anything absolutely egregious, because I've had companies come back and they've been like, oh, no, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that thing. And if they've said it on the record, then the record still stands. So watch out for being on the record. You can say things off the record. So if there's a piece of news that you want to share but you don't want them to write about, you can say, okay, this is off the record, and they won't speak about it, print it, or record it. And then you can also be on background. And being on background can be really helpful. We've kind of alluded to it before, where you can pitch yourself as an expert, and as an expert, you can kind of hang out in their email folder of experts, which I do have, where you can speak about a topic as the context of the topic, but you're not necessarily quoted as being the source for that topic. So there are 3 really important distinctions I think it's worth knowing about before going into those conversations.
The number 1 piece of advice I always give my clients is stop talking. Once you've said your 3 key messages, just know that if you continue to drone on to Kate's exact point, like a lot can end up on the record. and journalists often will just stop talking themselves and let you fill the void with noise. And as just humans, that's what we do. We just like to fill that empty space with more words. And if that is not your intended message and that's not what you were trying to say and you're now off topic, maybe that's what gets written about and not your 3 key messages. So stop talking.
Beware of the silence. The good journalists always use the silence. And then I would also say, kind of similar to that point, does anyone know the documentarian Louis Theroux? Yeah, right. So he's kind of an unassuming guy. He's a little bit bumbling. He has a really great connection with people. He has a very placid face when he's asking questions. He doesn't really react. And as a result, people keep telling him things and telling him things and telling him things that they should not be telling this man on camera. And it's the same kind of thing. So watch out for the journalists that are unassuming. And they're not trying to do gotcha journalism necessarily, but just be aware that you might overshare if you feel like you like them.
I think this has been touched on, but maybe just to emphasize it more, I think no one is ever going to care as much about what you're doing as you are. And that's a good thing. Like, it is great that we all care the most about what we're doing, but it's very easy to forget sometimes that when other people aren't in it, they're not going to see why it's so important. Like, that's your job to explain to them, why is this so important? Why does it matter to you? Instead of looking at it as, why is this important to me? Why do I care? And I think similar to that, also looking at who are you trying to talk to? If you're going through a massive hiring blitz, well, you're probably talking to talent, in which case your message might be a bit different than if you're looking for funding and you're trying to talk to investors. So I think just being really clear on who that is when you're crafting those 3 key messages.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. Huge thank you to our panelists. Again, just wanted to thank you all. Really fantastic insights. And I'm so excited that, again, we have this opportunity with global media attending. And I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of stories from people in the audience and from BC companies being profiled in the global news. We have such great companies, and something that we get told a lot is like we're not loud enough, or we don't market ourselves as much as so maybe our neighbors to the south. But this is our opportunity to really be bold and to shine. So yeah, thanks everyone.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tanitza, Nicole, Kate, Natalie, and Robin. That was an amazing conversation. But before I forget, I just want to say someone left their phone at registration. So if you lost your phone, please just see the tech table after this event. But for me, so many takeaways. This is I love this stuff, so I really enjoyed the conversation. But for me, some of the key takeaways is media matters, right? Gives you validation and visibility. So please take advantage of this opportunity with Web Summit. 2, what do I have here? Make it easy for media to tell your story, but make your pitch compelling. I remember a team member of yours, Amanda, from Web Summit told me, they see it all the time. Some startups will write a press release saying they're attending Web Summit and thinks it's news. That is not news. So make sure that you're doing your homework, make your pitch compelling to the media. And finally, let's see, my last one is do your homework. Make sure you know who you're pitching to, whether it's your story about your startup or if you're positioning yourself as an expert. So do your homework, read the news, and then understand who you're talking to. And finally, the 4th one I wanted to add is let's all go out and buy branded umbrellas, because obviously that is really cool. Okay. Next up, I want to say a little plug again. I think Amanda spoke about this. There is a deadline. If you haven't applied for Web Summit Startup Program, there is a deadline, which is April 20th. There is still opportunity for your startup to be part of the Alpha, Beta, or Growth program. So make sure you get your application in. To the next slide. Okay, and for those who have been selected by Web Summit to be part of the startup program at the conference or will be participating at the BC Pavilion, we will be inviting you for a 1-day boot camp just a week before the conference. And this is really an opportunity for you to prepare, get your pitch ready, make sure that you meet the rest of the BC delegation and that you're well ready to navigate this really complex conference. There's a lot going on, and we're really excited to have some amazing speakers, including Nicole. I think you're joining us. Amanda and her team will be joining us as well, making sure that you can navigate the app, know what you're doing, setting some goals for this conference. So really excited about that. So if you've been accepted, please look out for an invitation from Innovate BC really soon. Finally, tell us what you think, because we are still putting on some events and future events as well. We would love to hear your feedback. And for those who fill out our survey, you'll have a chance to win a ticket to Web Summit this year. And finally, register now. We do have a discount code. If you're not planning to attend as a startup, part of the startup program, we do have a discount code for general attendee tickets. And finally, I've said we have a lot of programs and resources to support startups and BC's tech companies across the province. Sign up for our newsletter. We launch new programs through this channel, so make sure that you sign up for our news. All right, well, thank you very much. And thank you again to Microsoft for hosting. Thank you to our amazing panelists and moderator. Thank you, Amanda, for joining, and Mary. And to all of our guests online, there's over 100 of you, so really thankful that everyone's really interested in this topic. We would love to hear more about what you would like to see from Innovate BC moving forward. Thank you so much.